two, 1, 2, 3. Stop, look up, that's right, that's where we have to go. Before this trail is lost to darkness, labyrinths, then walk ahead through these leaves of yellow, red, and brown. Wait, I think I see.
Kip Loui has made music in his hometown of St. Louis for years. He's a co-founder of the annual music festival Twangfest, an event that's brought music performers from all over the country to St. Louis for 24 years now. Kip has played in some great bands: Belle Starr, the Rockhouse Ramblers, the Transmitters, the High Dives. In recent years, Kip has teamed up to play and record with Diesel Island, a band whose often rotating lineup has featured Brian Henneman, Mark Ortmann, and John Horton, all formerly with the Bottle Rockets. He's also released solo albums with his wife JJ on vocals, guitar, and harmonica. I've known about Kip for years, but it was only recently that I realized he lives just a few minutes away. So on one fine evening here in the outskirts of St. Louis, we had a great talk.
I think we're gonna make it through. At least I hope we do. I hope that you do too. Find the wherewithal, 'cause night is falling. Stop, look up, that's right, that's where we have to go. Before this trail is lost to darkness, one more hill before
You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Kip, you and I have a lot of mutual friends, and I've known of you for years through bands you've been in. It's great that we recently connected, and it's nice to actually have someone back in the studio. I was doing a lot of call-ins from people who were either out of state, and even one is just sort of a precaution during one of those COVID upticks during season 1. But thanks for being here.
Oh, man, my pleasure.
Was guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
Yeah, and it's really the only instrument I play. And, I'm strictly a rhythm guitarist, even after all these years, decades of playing. I'm a rhythm guy. I describe myself as I'm primarily a songwriter who sings and plays a little guitar. That's how I describe myself. I'm a proficiently decent rhythm guitarist. I have no hot licks, but, I sing passably well, and I'd like to think I'm a better than average songwriter. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. But I strum a Gibson J45. That's
Nice.
my weapon.
Yeah, I always considered myself, and I still consider myself a rhythm player. In my teens, I would sit down and methodically I could sit down and figure out a fair amount of solos, like off albums and songs that I liked, but I had to work at it. I was just never good. I just didn't feel like I was very good at if I'm playing in front of a bunch of people and they want me to launch into an improv,
Right.
It's not my thing.
I think you're almost born a great lead guitarist, I mean, not that you don't have to work at it, you obviously do, but, your brain is kind of wired that way or not,
I think you're right.
Yeah. But I can, I get by with rhythm guitar. I provide that function in a band. Yeah.
Who were some of your early guitar influences, and what bands were you into back then?
Well, growing up, there was always an acoustic guitar lying around the house. I was the youngest of 6 kids, and I think all of my older brothers and sisters played guitar. It was the 70s, right? So, everybody's getting into Simon & Garfunkel and, Jim Croce and John Denver. I remember John Denver records in my house that my older sisters would listen to. And honestly, that stuff was just kind of in the air, that 70s singer-songwriter acoustic guitar playing thing, right? That was just on the radio and in my house. And I just kind of picked it up. I just sort of taught myself how to play, really, using the Simon and Garfunkel songbook, because they had like the little chords above the, like here's where you change to the G chord, here's where you change to the D chord, and I knew the song, right, just from hearing it on the radio. Right. So I was able to kind of teach myself the positioning. Yeah, right. And, just taught myself different strum patterns from listening to the music I loved. But I was always a huge music fan. That's what I would do for fun, was just sit in front of my parents. They had a hi-fi, right?
Mm-hmm.
The big giant console, and I would just spin records all day long. And it was an awesome childhood.
Yeah, we had a fair amount of the chord books and sheet music that had the chord diagrams at the top. So that was helpful to me.
It's a great way to teach yourself.
Yeah, I was the youngest too, but I was the youngest of only two. I have an older brother, so I was the youngest of the two siblings. But yeah, it was very much a Wally and the Beeve situation, which would make me the Beeve.
Yeah, right. Well, me too. I grew up here in Webster Groves.
Yeah.
And I tell people that it was like growing up in Mayberry,
Right.
Right.
But we both had, a lot of records when we were just kids. I mean, we were really young, and it was, of course, Beatles and Monkees, and I still have a stack of like Paul Revere and the Raiders 45s and stuff like that.
You betcha.
So between the records, my brother and I had, and I've talked about this so many times, but I just love talking about it. My dad just had this great. I was just fascinated with the album covers, I was, always, even as a kid, reading the liner notes, like, what's this all about? And he mostly had jazz, some folk, but a lot of jazz. And it was the Barney Kessel, Easy Like, that album cover, album, I would put it on, and I was just fascinated. Like, to this day, it's like one of my all-time favorite albums, and I have my dad to thank for that.
Yeah, I love a lot of those early jazz guys, the Barney Kessels and,
Joe Pass.
Oh, sure, Joe Pass. And, the guy from St. Louis, like...
There's Grant Green.
Green, that's who I'm thinking, yeah, the Grant Greens. So, yeah, Joe Pass, Grant Green... Barney Kessel, all those guys. I mean, that's the magic that they would make on their instruments. I'm a big genre hopping guy.
Yeah,
I love everything from jazz to folk to blues to country to gospel to soul to hip hop to you name it. Like the best of any genre I am interested in, pretty much. I'm a music fan as much as I am a music maker. So there you have it.
Looking to buy a guitar, an amp, pedals? Find great deals on all of these, as well as audio and recording gear at reverb.com. You can also sell your gear through Reverb. They have great articles about music gear and bands. And Reverb believes music makes the world a better place. That's why they created Reverb Gives, that provides youth music education programs all over the world with the instruments they need to make music. Link to Reverb through Frets with DJ Faye in the show notes for this episode. Well, in that period, though, that was pretty young. And then, of course, got into the teen years. My brother, his record collection started getting more interesting. And something that just had a big impact on me was he had the first 4 Neil Young albums. The self-titled first album, he had Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. He had After the Gold Rush and Harvest. I distinctly remember that being a noticeable turning point for me. I mean, I love a lot of music, like you were saying, but Neil's songs just really struck a chord with me in a very different way than others had. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but was there like a particular artist or band in your early days that you had a similar experience with that really just had a kind of a profound impact?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was real young, when I was still in like elementary school, again, I was pretty much just exploring my older brothers and sisters' records, right? But the one that really hit me and that I would actually listen to, and it's kind of sophisticated for a little kid, but I was the band, their self-titled second record, right? And there was all this enormous complexity and these cool chord changes and like this mix of rock and roll and country and folk and blues. And that's funny because like I later came back to that, and that's kind of what I do these days myself is, roughly speaking, in that Americana vein. But the band, they were a huge influence. Yeah. And then Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, Joni Mitchell
Court
records.
And Spark had a big impact on me.
There you go, yeah. And Blue, the album Blue, of course. And So the band, definitely.
Yeah, I still get chills when I hear the opening to Chest Fever.
Yeah. Garth Hudson, man.
Pretty powerful. And then it just segues into this amazing song where first few listens, you're like, what are they saying? I mean, the words are just sort of so random and wonderfully weird. And
that song has such a badass groove.
Yes.
It's like slow and plodding, but it still grooves at the same time. Chest Fever.
Well, I don't know if it was your first band. You've been in a lot of bands, but I love the band name Heebie Jeebies. Heebie Jeebies.
Yeah, that was my first all originals band. I kind of got a late start into all that. I was a late bloomer. So I was already 25 or 26 by the time I got around to putting together my first all originals band. And yeah, we were the Heebie Jeebies. And we were together really not that long, probably 3 years total, and that was in the 89, 1990, so early 90s was kind of the era of the Heebie-Jeebies.
The Heebie-Jeebies.
And we were a Cicero's Basement band, proudly, played many a show down there and had a lot of great musicians kind of come through the band, I feel like I was the finishing school for a lot of players, we were always looking for lead guitarists. And then we had like 3 different drummers, and but it was just great fun, and I learned a lot from that band. I learned how to be in a band from that band, and how to lead a band and bring in songs, and like, okay, here's like a chord chart for this thing I wrote. I figured out like how to do all that, and I'm kind of known for being the logistics guy in any band I'm in. Like I'm the dude booking the shows and kind of settling up at the end of the night with dealing with money and just all the unfun stuff that no one wants to do. And I learned how to do that in the Heebie-Jeebies.
It's just a fun thing to say. Heebie-Jeebies. Like that. Well, thinking about some of your other bands, you were in, I'm going to throw a few out there, Belle Starr.
Yeah, Belle Starr. When did that come? Okay, so the Heebie-Jeebies broke up, and I decided to reinvent myself and move back to Seattle. This was my second time living there. First time I was going to college, and the second time I was just like, I'm going to move back to Seattle and play music and be cool and find myself, right? And I had this hilarious idea to start a hard country band in Seattle during the height of grunge. So that was a bad business plan, and that didn't work out so well. So I was back home after only 2 years returning from Seattle, right? But then at that point I was like, well, I still kind of want to explore like this country folk rock thing. I've been writing these songs that really seem to sort of lend themselves to that. Because Heebie-Jeebies, we were just pop rock, just straight up pop rock, Elvis Costello, Marshall Crenshaw, kind of power poppy, slightly punky thing, right? But the songs that I was starting to write at that point were a little more on the country and folk tip. So I was like, well, all right, time to start that band. And I did. And we were called the Stonecutters. And our claim to fame is we had John Horton as our lead guitarist, and the great Spencer Marquardt on drums, who is still a good friend. They're both still good friends, and I still play music with both of them from time to time in different configurations. And then we had a wonderful bass player, also a former brother-in-law by the name of Dave Hilditch, who his claim to fame is he was the bass player for the Civil Tones, one of our
I used to go see them. Yeah.
Foremost instrumental bands. But yeah, Dave Hilditch was the bass player for the Stonecutters. He was also the bass player for the Heebie-Jeebies, and we also had a wonderful vocalist by the name of Lynn Rife, who is still playing to this day. She's had her own band for I think 15 years now, and they're called Salt of the Earth, and they are sort of an acoustic ensemble. And Mike Schrand of NPR is the bass player in that band. And Mike Schrand was also the lead guitarist in Belle Starr, which is the band that grew out of the Stonecutters. It's all very complicated. And the Stonecutters, we had to change our name. We found out there was another Stonecutters on the West Coast who were being managed by Neil Young's management company. And
so you became the new Stonecutters.
We became the new Stonecutters, and we decided to call ourselves Belle Starr.
I can never pass up an opportunity for that Spinal Tap reference.
That's right.
I'm going to just guess the Salt of the Earth. I wonder if the band name is a nod to the song on Beggar's Banquet.
Knowing Lynn, I doubt it. I don't think she was hugely influenced by the Stones.
That's where my mind went, was Salt of the Earth.
No, I think she probably just in the more general sense of like being down to earth and kind of being, of the people, that would be Lynn for sure. She's delightful.
Well, I do want to talk about some of the other bands you've been in, but you mentioned Seattle. Am I right that you worked with Scott McCoy and Young Fresh Fellows?
Ha! Yeah. That's kind of a crazy story. So I was a 22-year-old college student in Seattle. I was attending Seattle University in the late 80s. And I sort of had a passing interest in music journalism. So I was like writing reviews for the Rocket, which was like their version of the Riverfront Times. It was their city newspaper for arts and entertainment. I don't even think they exist anymore. But yeah, I was doing articles for them. And on assignment, they sent me to a show for this band that I'd never heard of called the Young Fresh Fellows. And they're like, yeah, go review their show and write about it. They have a record coming out. I'm like, sure. So I went there and I just freaking loved it. I loved their energy and their songs and their humor and where they were coming from. They were like, to call them a poor man's Replacements is kind of, that doesn't do them justice, but like that's in the ballpark of what I experienced. Was like, this would be like the Replacements, but they're playing this bar in Seattle and they're hilarious and they're smart and they're obviously great guys, right? So after the show, I sort of got to know them and I kind of befriended the band and the various members and Scott. And I kind of started following them around town just as a fan, a fanboy at this point. Less so journalist and more just, like, hey, I'm really into what you're doing.
Right.
And then I got a wild hair to record an album, like a solo Kip Loui record of some songs that I had been kind of writing in my bedroom. And I was totally naive about the music business or how any of that worked or anything. I just knew that those guys had a recording studio where they would record, and they had this engineer by the name of Conrad Uno who had his own little record label, right? And so I very naively approached them and said, "Hey guys, would you back me up in your studio and like kind of help me like get these songs recorded?" And amazingly they said yes,
Wow.
And I think they just did it to be nice, and we were kind of friends, and I had written like this small little review of one of their records, but they did it, and I roped all four of them into kind of being my backup band, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had extremely limited studio experience at that time. But we recorded, I want to say, 11 songs total. They were all originals, stuff I'd written, some of my early songs. And at the end, I'm like, wow, this sounds great. I'm all excited. And so I went to their little record label, and I'm like, hey, would you put this out? And they're like, who are you? And, so long story short, the record it never came out at the time. Right. And I approached other sort of little labels, big and small, about maybe releasing it, but I was nobody. Nobody knew who I was. And the fact that it was the Young Fresh Fellows, people were like, whatever. So that album sat in the can for literally decades. And then I finally, I literally, like, I was cleaning up my basement about 2 years ago, and then I found the old master tapes. And I'm like, wow, I have not heard these songs in many years. Maybe I'll try to find somebody who has a reel-to-reel tape player and see if there's anything there. And we did. And I'm like, this still sounds like a good record, So I just ended up slapping it on my Bandcamp page. So anybody who's curious can go hear my record that I cut with the Young Fresh Fellows in the late 80s. It's up on my Bandcamp page for a small donation. It can be yours as a download. But yeah, that was my claim to fame with those guys. And I got a hold of, I forget who. It was probably... Was it Scott? Might have been Scott. I let him know that I finally released it, and like, here's a promo copy.
Oh, nice.
And I think they were bemused to hear the music of the Days of Yore that we made. But everybody seems to dig it that hears it. Yeah.
I love Scott. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I've talked to him a handful of times, and he just seems like just such a cool guy. I hope he's doing better. I know he had some health issues.
He did. He had a really serious stroke.
That's right. Yeah.
But my understanding is he has recovered from that, and he's back to recording and playing. I don't know if he's playing as much, but he's still doing what he loves to do, which is make music in front of people.
Yeah.
He's just a force of nature.
Yeah, he really is.
And, like this universally beloved human being.
I mean, just how could you not
Yep.
love that guy?
Yeah.
Mostly seen him with like the Baseball Project and a couple other. The -5.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, we wish him well. I did hear he's doing much better. So.
This is Kip Loui, and you are listening to Frets with DJ Faye.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
'Cause I'm a liar.
Florence Dorr was born and raised in Nashville and now lives in North Carolina with her husband, Will Rigby, and their daughter, Georgie. In addition to being a singer-songwriter-guitarist, Florence has authored several books, is professor of American literature at UNC Chapel Hill, and serves on the board of the Bob Dylan Institute.
I will say, like teaching, like being in the classroom, going into the studio makes you realize just exactly how much you're missing by not being in person, It's just kind of, there's a magic that happens when you're all together. I mean, recording is fun and you can do all these different things, but there is some sort of ineffable kind of magic that takes place. And same with teaching. It's just like, oh yeah, that was okay, but this is great, right? Something in the air, right? Ideas, music, just sort of, there's a melding and an emotion that just can't, you can't get it technologically, remotely.
I think you'll really enjoy listening to my talk with Florence Dorr in Season 1 of Frets. Did you also collaborate with Mark Spencer?
Mark Spencer, from currently member of the Sunvolt team, yeah. Yes, indeed. So that story is, I'm a full-time member of Brian Henneman's side project, Brian's long-running side project, which is a country cover band called Diesel Island. And at the height of the Bottle Rockets, Mr. Henneman decided to start this up as just a way to have fun and make a few bucks when he wasn't out on the road, right? He was going to go into different bars and taverns and honky tonks and just play straight up old school country music. And at that time, I was just coming off a band called the Rockhouse Ramblers, where we did exactly that. We played old school country music. So Brian knew I could kind of play and sing that stuff. And he wanted somebody to like play acoustic guitar and sing harmonies and bring that to the equation. And I'm like, yeah, man, I can totally do that. You know? So I actually approached him. You know, I got his email from a friend, and he wrote me back right away and said, yeah, come on over. And,
That's great.
Yeah. So I've been doing that for 20 years with Brian. But Brian would enlist, you know, various friends of his to come play with Diesel Island, you know, if they happen to be in town. And Mark Spencer, and he went back a ways to, I suppose, the Uncle Tupelo days.
Right.
Because Mark was in, he was in Blood Oranges, who were like a seminal kind of late 80s, early 90s Boston band. And they were kind of like they were combining bluegrass and punk, you know, so they were super cool. I loved that band. But anyway, so at that point, Mark was traveling and touring and recording with Sunvolt. And Brian had him play with Diesel Island at a show at the Venice Cafe, I want to say. And that's how I met Mark Spencer. And we immediately hit it off. He's, again, just very funny and personable and kind of down to earth. You know, so we kept that friendship going, and I would text him and sort of email him. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, shortly after my son was born, I got the hankering to do another kind of solo project. And I was trying to think of guitarists that I was hearing play on these songs. And I'm like, man, if I could get Mark Spencer to just kind of throw down in the studio on this stuff, but that would be really cool. So, again, you know, the pieces all just fell into place. And I don't even think Mark heard the songs. He just came into the studio and we recorded them pretty much live down there in Dave Toretta's basement of his studio on the hill. And we released that record. It's called Kip Loui, The Hill Recordings, with JJ Loui, who's my wife. She sings harmony on it. And yeah, so Mark Spencer is the sole guitarist on those recordings. And again, that album is up there on my Bandcamp page, you know. I'm pretty much just self-releasing all my records at this point. I have probably 6 or 7 or 8.
I'm a big fan of Bandcamp. I think
Bandcamp is the way to go anymore.
It is the
man.
way to go.
Unless you were signed to a major label and they are actively promoting you, just do it yourself. Put it out on Bandcamp. I swear.
Makes a lot of sense, and it's a good thing.
Yep.
I don't personally know Mark Spencer. I mean, I know who he is, obviously, but yeah, his name came up a couple times recently. Well, recently in season 1, talked to Florence Dorr, who was just great.
Yeah, she is.
She was great.
Yeah.
And yeah, found out that Mark Spencer, her upcoming album, Highways and Rocket Ships, is, you know, a killer lineup. It's Peter Holzapfel, her husband, Will Rigby.
Yes.
Mark Spencer's on that.
Right.
And yeah, it was a really great talk with her. But yeah, we were talking about Mark Spencer a little bit.
He's the man about town. He's the guy that every Roots band in the world wants on their record, because he can come in and instantly determine like what the song needs and just play that, you know. And he's, you know, multi-instrumentalist, and his musical palette is broad, so he can draw from soul and blues and rock and punk and anything you want or need. And half the time I don't even need to say, hey, Mark, play this thing. You know, he'll just intuit it and just kind of figure out what the song needs, and we'll give you exactly that, you know.
I admire guys that can just do that.
His spark is endless, you know. And Mark's like all of us. He's kind of up there, but he has the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old, right. I swear, you know. And it's just, you know, he's also just a great person, which just, that's really important to me. Like, the older I get, I want to be around like nice people, you know, like people who kind of have it together and are not super how to say this kindly, who are not overly, who do not have a bunch of drama going on in their lives. Like, you know, I'm a full-time, I have a full-time job. I'm a teacher at Lindbergh High School, and, you know, and I have a family and a son and a wife. And, you know, at this point, I just want to spend my time around people who are kind of focused and but and yet still like really creative, but are kind of like not, like we can just get down to it and get done what we need to get done,
Right.
like that's the kind of person who I like playing with. So I'm at this point in my life, I love everybody I play music with, and it's just a real honor and a privilege. I mean, I know it sounds kind of corny, but it's just true. I fancy myself being the least accomplished musician frequently of any band I am in, but I always contribute what I can, and I always give it 100%. And I've had the great fortune of having some really good players kind of help me flesh out my songs over the years, and I'm just really grateful for that.
That's great. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
God bless the stars, God bless the night, God bless the land when there ain't no right. God bless you, God bless me, God bless the droplets that make up the sea.
You're hearing God Bless, a really tasty tune from the 2020 album Show Me State by Kip and J.J. Loui. This track and many more great songs and albums by Kip Loui are available at Bandcamp, the online record store and music community where passionate fans can discover, connect with, and directly support the artists they love. We also mentioned collaborating with your wife, JJ. I know she sings and plays guitar and mandolin, I think.
Yeah. She's that's how we met. She was sort of a budding singer-songwriter herself. We met at Frederick's Music Lounge.
The best.
Yeah. This was about how long ago now? 17 years ago we met. Yeah. At Frederick's Music Lounge, and I was a single man at the time, and she was more or less single. That's another story for another time. But we soon started playing music together, and she had written some songs that I just loved, and I really liked her voice, and I really liked her. But our relationship at first was strictly professional. We were just playing music together as a duo, kind of around St. Louis, and we were playing mostly covers, but a few originals would sneak in there from time to time, things that I'd written, things that she had written. And, a little romance kind of was born of all that. And next thing you know, we're married, and now we have an 8-year-old son, Max. So, we're living large and living well.
Yeah. Well, the two of you wrote and recorded some songs during the lockdown.
Yes, we did. Jay was stockpiling some cool tunes. She had 3 or 4 that I really liked. So on this last album, I said, "Hey, Jay, let's do this as an actual like husband and wife project. Like let's." Because I've had a lot of experience in the studio, and she really hadn't. So she was kind of nervous about all that. But I think it worked out just fine. We had the good fortune of getting 3/4 of the Bottle Rockets to back us up on the record. It's called Kip and J.J. Loui, Show Me State.
Yeah, I have that album. I love that album.
Thanks, man. Yeah, kind of a theme record. It's just 12 story songs and character sketches about people living across the fair state of Missouri and kind of their situations, and a little bit of social commentary. Nothing overt, but it's in there. Like if you want to figure out my politics, you probably can from from the record. But that was a real pleasure just having Brian Henneman plays lead guitar on that record, and John Horton plays bass.
Yeah,
he's as good a bassist as he is a lead guitarist, and that's saying a lot,
Yeah.
So he's one of those guys you hate because they're so good at what they do. And then Mark Ortmann, ever faithful, ever awesome on drums. He is Mark the Clock Ortmann. His timing is impeccable, and he always does for the song exactly what it needs, no more, no less. It's just like, it's there. He is a rock solid foundation, you know? And then my friend, we go back years and years, Carl Pandolfi on keyboards. Carl's played with any number of bands over the years, but he was on piano for this record. And then Jay does passably good harmonica, and she's a rhythm guitarist like I am. And then, lately she's been teaching herself some mandolin.
I saw that. There was a little video I saw somewhere online not too long ago where you guys were just kind of sitting there talking on the sofa or something and launched into a song or two, and she was playing some really nice mandolin, I thought.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's we're working on a new project. I'm not sure we're going to bill it as Kip and JJ Loui. You know, it might just be kind of a Kip Loui thing, and then Jay
featuring.
Yeah, exactly, featuring. You know, she'll sing and play mandolin on some things, but that's kind of fun. We're trying to figure that out. And once again, we are enlisting various friends of ours. And, you know, Mark Spencer has promised me to play on a few things. And
nice.
I think we might be enticing Mr. Henneman to come down into the studio again. And, there's Eric Amble might end up doing something too. So again, I am blessed with nice people helping me make this happen.
I can't say enough about Eric Amble. He's been a great help, just whether he realizes it or not, with this whole little project of mine in the podcast. He's shared things and liked them, and he's been I admire him so much for his talent and everything he does. And
you
anyway,
bet. Yeah. He's kind of one of the kings of roots rock, you know. He knows, and he's still doing it. And again, he's one of those guys who's a little older, but he has the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He just loves making music and recording it.
He's old like me.
He's old like me. We all old now. But yeah, no, Eric's great. I could spend a lot of time just talking about Eric. You know, and he's been other people's lead guitarists.
Right.
He's kind of got his own music going, and then these days he's recording and producing a lot of bands in New York City there. So he's figured out a way to make a living for it.
Yeah, just got the new Sarah Borges.
It's so good.
It is really good.
And you know, Keith from the Bottle Rockets, you know,
he's on that too.
Plays bass on that, and he I think he co-wrote some of the songs, and it's just a beautifully rocking record.
It really
man.
is. I love that one.
And I love how they recorded it, which was she had some songs that she recorded like little demos on her iPhone, and she sent Eric those, and he worked around that, and he would layer like bass and drums underneath them, and then he did guitars on top of it. But if you listen to the thing, it sounds like they were all in the room at the same time recording, you know. So it's just like hats off to Eric for that engineering feat, you know. I
came across a cover you did of Bill Monroe's song "Sitting Alone in the Moonlight."
Yeah,
really nice.
Oh, thank you. Again, that's Mark Spencer on lead guitar. Yeah. He kind of makes that happen. Also, I need to mention this. So on that record, minimal production. Like we just, you know, I would have an acoustic guitar. Richard Trallis, a good friend of mine, he plays with Diesel Island. He came in on upright bass. Spencer Marcourt just sat in on a single snare. That's all he had, was a single snare drum. And then vocals. And then Mark Spencer playing electric lead. So it was almost like a Sun Studio, you know, early Elvis kind of configuration. Minimal, but it worked beautifully. And I plan to record like that again in the not too distant future. I love that sort of approach where you just, you know, you strip it down. And sometimes less really is more, you know, at least in my view, you know, for what I'm doing. But Sitting Alone in the Moonlight, old Bill Monroe tune that I knew from just, you know, loving country and bluegrass music. And it was one of the first songs that JJ and I ever learned together when we first started dating.
Sweet.
Yeah, so it seemed appropriate to record it. So it's on that Kip Loui, the Hill recordings with JJ Loui. It's on that. It's on that record.
I got to keep putting in a plug for Bandcamp.
Bandcamp.
You guys need to go to Bandcamp and check out all the stuff that's available from Kip.
Yep. Kip Loui, bandcamp.com or something like that. I don't know. Just you'll find it.
If you're a podcast addict like me, you might have thought about starting your own. I'm having a lot of fun creating and sharing my podcast, Frets with DJ Faye. It seemed daunting at first, and I had no idea how to proceed after recording my first episodes. Then I discovered Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 people, even knuckleheads like me, launch a podcast. The tools they provide make it incredibly easy to get your thing going. They'll also help you get your podcast into all the major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and more. You get a great-looking website, audio players to drop into other websites, analytics, and tools to promote your podcast. To get a no-risk free trial of Buzzsprout, or to find out about their low-cost monthly plan options, follow the link in today's show notes and let them know that DJ Faye sent you. Learn the ins and outs of podcasting through people who eat, drink, and breathe it. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. Now, back to mine. Well, I want to get back to another band you mentioned, but I don't think we talked a whole lot about, the Rockhouse Ramblers.
Oh, man. One of my favorite groups I was ever a member of. The Rockhouse Ramblers started after I got the CD issue of the Byrds' Sweetheart of the Rodeo. I was listening to it and just loving it. And this would have been, gosh, when would this been? Sometime in the 90s, I think. Yeah, late 90s, right? And at that time, I was like, I would love to start a hard country band, like where we just did country cover tunes even, And at that time, I was related to John Horton. He was my brother-in-law. That's another story. Anyway, I used to be married to a sister. Everything's fine. Everybody's good. We're all good.
No judgment.
Yeah, right. So I enlisted John, and I said, "Hey, John, how about we try to put together like a group that just plays old country songs, just for fun." Because I wanted to stretch myself as a songwriter. I had a real interest in that music because I had gone down the rabbit hole of listening to like old school country from the 40s and 50s and 60s, and was just obsessed by it for a while there. And I still love that stuff. But so I got John, and at that point we started reaching out to different people who we thought would be a neat addition to that concept. We stumbled on Gary Hunt, who was already kind of an elder statesman of the scene even then. He's about 10 years older than us. But Gary was a veteran of like various country and bluegrass bands and was just a hecka good country picker, like an astonishingly good country lead guitarist. And so we approached him, and he amazingly said, "Yeah, sure." So we got Gary, and then we ended up through the mill kind of approaching Dade Farrar. Now, Dade is Jay's brother, and Dade he's a character, man. He is just a bona fide, excellent country singer. He can sing country songs like nobody's business. He was just born with that kind of voice. So he grew up playing like bluegrass mostly, and then a little bit of rockabilly. So we knew that he had the kind of background we wanted. And we approached him, and he also was like, "Yeah, this sounds cool. Let's try it out." And we rounded out the band by enlisting Danny Kathreiner on drums. And Danny was a guy I knew mostly from the rock scene. But I knew he was kind of, I think he was between bands at that time. So I think it was my idea to kind of approach him because I thought he had a style that would also be kind of conducive to what we were doing. And he said, sure. So thus the Rockhouse Ramblers were born. And we proceeded to play like every 4-hour bar gig we could. Dade would sing lead on a song, and then Gary would sing lead on a song, and then I would sing lead on a song. So we would kind of, we would circle and kind of each take turns taking lead, and then we would just sing harmonies with each other. And all of us brought songs to the table, just like cover tunes that we all loved. And man, I learned more about playing country music from that band than any other project I've ever been involved in. Like I would just, every night I would stand there and just be humbled and amazed that I could stand between John Horton and Gary Hunt, like trading incredible solo after incredible solo with each other, you know? And then Gary would show me like different kind of country music strumming patterns, because there's some complexity to that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as simple as you might think, especially if you're playing kind of stuff that has more of a swing feel. Like there's a definite approach you got to take on the rhythm guitar if you're playing swing. So I picked that up from Gary. He showed me some things, and just, you know, general aesthetic and like, you know, that band taught me a lot. And we ended up writing a bunch of originals too. And in fact, we recorded three, you know, albums or CDs or whatever you want to call it, of original songs, you know, that were written by Dade and Gary and myself, pretty evenly distributed, you know. Man, I love that band. I have so many fond memories of that band, you know, and yeah, we had a pretty good run. It was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years together. And then that band morphed into Colonel Ford, and Colonel Ford is still playing out to this day, playing honky tonks around the St. Louis region, same way that Diesel Island is. In fact, we play some of the same places.
I mentioned to John Horton that I had gone to, I think it was like a reunion show of Rockhouse Ramblers. Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of fun. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you. We do those periodically. You know, we're probably due for another. Yeah, it was a band that I loved, and felt like kind of ended perhaps a little prematurely. There were some business things going on in the background, and you know, we probably weren't in any position to like go tour. And the label that was interested in us really wanted that. That was part of the stipulation, was like, hey, if you guys are going to do this, if we're going to like sink money into you, you know, you got to be out there touring. Right. And at that point, we were already kind of like middle-aged guys with families, you know, so it wasn't meant to be, you know, but we did manage to put out 3 albums worth of original songs that I'm still very proud of to this day.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I was born on the breeze, raised beneath the trees, and the night the courthouse burned, they lost my name.
While living in Columbia, Missouri, Deke Dickerson formed the much-loved garage rock band The Untamed Youth. He was 17. In the early 90s, Deke moved to LA and has enjoyed great success as an excellent guitarist. He has a regular column in Guitar Player, has written several books on guitar. He's even scored and contributed songs to film soundtracks.
I look back on it now, I'm like, wow, I would have thought I was a total weirdo if I wasn't me. But, you know, I grew up in the 70s, and all my friends were listening to Kiss and Led Zeppelin, and somehow or another, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I just got turned on to 50s rock and roll, and something about it just kind of latched on. And then, of course, later on, when I started playing guitar, got into guys like Chuck Berry and Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps and Eddie Cochran and all those kind of people. And it just kind of exploded from there.
My talk with guitarist Deke Dickerson, coming soon on Frets.
Started from good seed, but got swallowed by the weeds. Go tell your mom you're fooling with a wild, wild thing.
Well, I couldn't go, but I saw that Diesel Island played Venice Cafe was it just a few nights ago? Couple nights?
Yeah, man. Diesel Island is hilarious. You know, like I said, Brian Henneman started the band, you know, so we all kind of serve at his pleasure. But the very concept of Diesel Island has kind of expanded over the years. And at this point, I compare us to like the Preservation Hall Jazz Band down in New Orleans, in that there is a big bullpen at this point of like guys who will show up and play as Diesel Island. And you got to be a heck of a good player to be in Diesel Island. Don't get me wrong. Like you got to be able to sing and play, man, because that's what the music is all about. And you got to be able to make the people dance, because we play lots of dances in places where there's country dancers. So, but we probably have 8, 9, 10 guys that are part of our larger bullpen at this point. And, you know, we have always played shows without Brian, because when he was out bottle rocking, there would be times when he simply wasn't in town.
Right.
So we've always enlisted other like lead guitarists and other singers. And at this point, we've recently introduced the lovely and talented and hilarious Jesse Irwin.
Oh,
Jesse's been,
another from the old Fredericks days.
Yes, yes. And Jesse is
play there.
funny and smart and just a natural born front man. So he brings a lot of new energy to the band. And then probably the guy who I will vote as the most underrated guitarist in St. Louis, John Ferber.
Oh, yeah. We used to go see Swing Set.
Yeah, man.
Back in the early days,
right.
yeah.
So he can play swing, he can play country, he can play blues, he can play psychedelic rock. He can do whatever you need, you know. And Ferber is just, again, a sweet and humble and beautiful human being. And it is nothing but a pleasure to spend time with him and around him. And, you know, I figured it out, man. I figured it out. Like, the musicians I like being around the most are the ones who have a very sort of workmanlike approach to the music. Like, their ego is not, you know, at stake here. You know, it's not a bunch of drama. It's not about them. Like, we've all figured out, like, we're here to do a job, you know, and I mean that in the best possible way. Like, we're here to provide a service and to play music for people and hopefully get them into it, you know, like, that's our job. And that's been the job of musicians for centuries, like since time immemorial. That is what we do, right? We you know, this sort of modern notion of like fame and stardom and like social media, and, you know, these days, Christ, people have their Instagram page up before they've even written any songs, and they're
right.
and they're trying to sell themselves as, you know, performing artists, and I just find it baffling and bizarre and weird.
The
like
promo.
Yeah, it's all about image and it's always been about it. Don't get me wrong. You know, like I say to people, there's music and there's the music business, right? And then there's this little oval in our Venn diagram where they overlap, you know, sometimes, right?
Right.
And if you're lucky, you can sort of inhabit that space in between the two. Yeah. But the music business is often diametrically opposed to what's going on with the actual music. And at this stage in my life, you know, I just want it to be about the music, man.
Yeah.
You know, and if I can make a few bucks doing that, and, you know, I would probably love if somebody a little more famous than me would cover one of my songs. That's still a goal. That will always be a goal. I would love that, you know.
Great.
But at this point, I don't need fame and fortune. Well, okay, I lied. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't turn it away.
Let me put it this way. I don't want fame. I'll take the fortune. You can keep the fame. Just give me the fortune. Give me a little money so I can like put my son through college.
So you can keep things going.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Oh man, when you mentioned John Ferber, back in my single days, many a night I used to live not too far from Riddles, the old Riddles.
Yeah.
And I would go see whenever Swing Set was playing at Riddles, I was there. I lived like 5 minutes away, and I would go see the Swing Set all the time.
Rockhouse Ramblers, that was one of our home bases too.
Riddles.
We played Riddles all the time. And they didn't pay that great, but they would throw in a free meal. And that's what made it worthwhile.
Food was great.
We would get there an hour early and have a fabulous dinner.
It was a cool place.
And then go play for 4 hours.
It was like a dark little bar on the loop, and it was just great. And the
ever
music
so
was great.
slightly seedy, you know, but in a good way.
It had a nice... it
had a little grease, you know,
the right amount
on the carpeting.
Seediness.
Yeah. Right. You know, it is
That's
missed.
Right. Well, this was pre-pandemic. I guess this must have been a few years ago. Might have been just like kind of right before all that. Probably right before 2020. A couple friends had some art in an art gallery along Gore there, we're right down from Euclid Records. Anyway, went to the art gallery like early evening, and then was just, you know, it was still a nice night. I was walking down the sidewalk and I heard some music at CJ Muggs, and the windows were even open, and just kind of walked by, and there's Brian Henneman. Diesel Island was doing some shows at CJ Muggs.
Oh, yeah. We did those for 2 or 3 years at least.
Yeah.
That was kind of a long slog, to be honest, because it was 9 to 1. And then they had a policy there that the band wouldn't be played until like the very, like, as they were getting ready to lock the doors at the end of the night. That's when they would pay the band.
I remember it was late.
Yeah, right. So it would be like 2:00 in the morning, sometimes 2:30 before they would finally pay the band. And we just couldn't do that after a while. It just got to be kind of like, oh, please. Now I've heard that since then they have revamped how they're doing music like 8 to 11 now.
Oh, I didn't even know. I haven't been back in a while.
Yeah. So 8 to 11 now, much more sensible. And I think they have rethought how they are presenting music. So no hard feelings towards CJ Muggs. Yeah. They're still, any venue that will allow musicians to come in and play their own music, I'm all in favor of, just on the principle alone.
Well, Kip, I want to thank you for doing this. And now that I know you're living nearby, I didn't know that
5
recently.
minutes from you.
Yeah, well,
5 minutes from you.
I
man.
hope we can hang out more often.
Yeah, me too.
All
Me
right,
too. You have a beautiful home, by the way.
Thanks, man. And thanks for doing this.
Of course. My pleasure.
Say there's not much left of the town, just a few old houses that are falling down. Population 1,000 or so. I wanted more, so I had to go. People say you live there still. I want to see you, but I never will. 'Cause that's 400 miles and 22 years back to Lestarville.
Thanks for listening to Frets with DJ Faye. If you like the show, you can follow or subscribe for free at most podcast platforms. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.